I'm Roger Anionson, and we're winding up what's been a good couple of days with my co-partner and mind ram, Michael Patterson, who's helped shape some of the curriculums here at PCC. And the college curriculum for gerontology students has changed since we put in the course, The Aging Mind and Cognitive Activity Design. And we've got some things ahead that we've been looking at that aren't in the books that we've written in detail, and they're emerging. Some of the books we may be talking about and some of the ideas haven't really been fully developed, but we're trying to see where in this puzzle, this jigsaw puzzle of new science and new ideas, where do these fit? So Michael, we can talk about almost anything, and we decided to start with Martin Seligman.
Yeah. Just to back up a little bit, our first book, Strong Brain, Sharp Minds, and where we really came from initially was this, our fascination with neuroscience, and that the emerging science that was showing us that we could actually do something to prevent cognitive decline and delay or prevent the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that was very exciting. And our first book, Strong Brain, Sharp Minds, really explores that. And it's more of a textbook, really going through what we learned about brain health. But in the back of our minds, you know, we were always sort of thinking, well, it's one thing to have strong brains, but what do you use them for? What do we use our minds for?
In the field of gerontology, I always, from the beginning, as an activity director, wanted to know, how do I apply something that's emerging from science? Apply it to someone not a decade from now, but how do I apply what seems to be working to people who are in need right now?
Right, right. So where that led us to was an expanded concept, I guess. Although we always said our mission was always a longer life worth living, but a lot of our early focus was just on getting the brain healthy. As we began to get into really exploring this idea, that's almost like a first step. You get the brain.
That's right, get up to a balance, stabilized.
Yep.
And is that all there is?
No, there's more.
Okay.
You know, so then there's this whole new world. We kind of got into it through Martin Seligman, you were talking about, who came out with a recent book called Flourishing, in which he described the whole emergence or reemergence of positive psychology. They make the folks who are doing positive psychology make the point that psychology historically, for most of its length, has focused on what's wrong with people, on depression.
Studied people who are in depression or have challenges, and the goal was then to bring them up to a balance.
Yeah, to get rid of all of the negative stuff. So it goes in, it deals with people who are suffering and trying to get them out of it. And Seligman himself has been a working psychologist, and he said, first of all, the success rate is 50-50. Sometimes you can get people out of depression, oftentimes you can't. But even once you've gotten people out of depression, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy. It just means that they're not depressed anymore. And they described this as languishing. And he said, you had people who were just lost. Their whole identity was built around being depressed. You got rid of that, you think, okay, I've done my work, but they're not really feeling good. So positive psychologists began saying, we need to look at what makes people happy.
That's right. And when I heard Seligman in one of his talks talk about how if all of the effort of psychology is to work just on this cohort that needs to be pulled from unhappy to not unhappy, isn't there a place we can go beyond just
right.
not unhappy? And it turns out that there is. But you don't just simply push someone. You study those that have the elements of joy and happiness in their life, and then try to adapt whatever they're doing. It's kind of like, I'll have whatever they're having. And by having that attitude, I saw Seligman when he wrote the book, and the book, by the way, we want everyone to know is Flourish with no ing. So what we did is capture that idea, add an active feel to it. So if we can get those who are not unhappy to do what Seligman and his whole entire cohort of followers and his students at Penn and other places around the globe look to see what works with our species, apply that to those that we can get up to the languishing stage, and see what happens.
And then go beyond, right.
Go beyond.
So now, as we've learned more of that, and as is always the case, once you start diving into a topic, you realize there's a whole world out there so we've been really immersing ourselves in the literature and the scholarship and the science, and it's a very robust field.
But I want to make sure that it's real clear to anyone who's watching this. It almost sounds, Michael, like you're saying sometimes we get out into the weeds. But what I see is we're out into the garden that's ready to be harvested. There's so much good information out there, and that it does take a team of people, and you and I are doing our best to keep up. We think we're onto something with a do-it-yourself, in a sense that we're showing people through some of the models we've got in some of the design books that this is something that is so personal, so tailored, that it will only work potentially for one person, but there's generalizations that you've captured, especially within this most recent design book.
Right. Yeah, and that's sort of one of the points that the Strong Brain, Sharp Minds, our initial book, really focuses on brain health. The Better Brains by Design, we've developed with this newer expanded consciousness about positive psychology and the goal of flourishing. And so this series of book integrates that a lot more. Probably our next step is got to be taking a step back and doing almost the equivalent of the Sharp Brains, Strong Minds for the flourishing side, and really sort of a reference point that if people are getting into doing the strategies and realize that there's something in the flourishing area that they want to go to and get in more depth, they can go to this reference book, or we can teach a class on it and so on.
And this next body of knowledge that we think is going to support the book on what we'll call right now flourishing and beyond. 5-10 years ago, that would have been impossible because the science was so thin at that time, not because it wasn't there, it's just that no one had invested the research dollars to go see what's there by studying those who have succeeded in a way that we call flourishing.
Yep. Yeah, the research is now, there is a robust field, and there are people, producing really important stuff. So it's the right time to try to aggregate this and present it in a way that people, as you say, people actually put it to use on a daily basis.
We'll keep at it. We'll keep building the groundwork for that one.
Right.